One. Eddie Radosevich, Soonerscoop.com, George Stoia here, Nashville, SEC Media Days. Obviously, a little bit new for all of us here as Oklahoma makes the move into the SEC 2024. It is a little bit weird that we're sitting here asking questions about something that's going to happen in a year. Yeah. But let's just start overall. We were at Big 12 Media Days last week, obviously down in Arlington, in Nashville now. What have you thought about day one for Sooner Scoop here in SEC Media Days?
Everyone's been very welcoming. I would say that. I mean, definitely in the media, I think there's been some people like, oh, what are you guys doing here? But there's been a lot of questions about OU in Texas. Obviously, that's a huge narrative here at SEC Media Days. It was a huge narrative at Big 12 Media Days last week. So it's been a lot of fun. I think it's pretty welcoming. I mean, I think every coach has gotten asked in some form about OU in Texas, and every single one's been like, hey, it's great for the conference. Now, we'll see what that looks like next year when they actually start playing games, but it's been a lot of fun checking out kind of the lay of the land, getting to know some of the people that are here all the time, and also just kind of hearing their opinions of what they think about OU football.
Obviously, we'll get to some of the interviews that we did earlier. This is kind of a wrap-up of everything that happened here while we were in Nashville on our first day in Nashville. Obviously, tomorrow's a big day with Josh Heupel in Tennessee and Shane Beamer in South Carolina, Spencer Rattler, some Oklahoma connections, if you will. Nick Saban was on the podium today, obviously. I think that, like, one of the things, too, that people, he's a very intimidating person, obviously, but he has some jokes. I mean, He makes people laugh a little bit.
Yeah, he got asked about his favorite cake. I think he also had some good jokes about him making a trip to Italy with his wife, so he was fun to listen to, and you know, he had some good things to say about OU in Texas, and, you know, two great programs. Obviously, the Crimson Tide are going to be visiting Norman next year, which is going to be a lot of fun, playing Texas this year. So he was here, good to talk to. You know, Sam Pittman remembered some of his time. Obviously, he coached a year at Oklahoma, I think in 1998. He's also, you know, grew up an OU fan, growing up in Oklahoma. And then Mark Stoops. I mean, he got a lot of OU questions, talked about, obviously, his nephew Drake, his brother Mike, who's his outside linebackers coach, and even Brent Venables, who he has a close relationship with. So it was fun to hear from those guys today. Billy Napier, you know, we didn't hear much from him about Oklahoma, but all those guys kind of touched on the great program that Oklahoma and Texas are.
Yeah, and I think that was probably the biggest takeaway. Let's talk about some of the national guys that we talked to. We obviously On3 with Andy Staples. We talked to him earlier. I think the general sentiment was Oklahoma's going to be fine.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think one thing he also talked about was, hey, even if it doesn't work with Brent Venables, they'll just go hire somebody else. And he talked about the history of Oklahoma. It's been one of the greatest programs, you know, in the history of college football. And he sounds confident that they're going to figure it out. Now, he was disappointed in their first season, right, under Brent Venables, but he still thinks it, you know, it can move in the right direction. And, you know, he sounds pretty confident that they'll compete at a high level this year in the Big 12.
Here's a little taste of us with Andy Staples this afternoon.
I expect them to be one of the best teams in the Big 12, and this is an interesting one because this is the first time in a while, and I know everybody looks at the recruiting rankings and says, well, Texas recruits just as well as – no, Oklahoma has developed NFL players better than Texas for the last 10 years. Yeah. It's obvious. You can tell by the draft. This might be the first time in a long time that Texas really has had more NFL talent than Oklahoma has. So they are going to be kind of the underdog in that deal. And then you've got the situation where all of the teams that are staying in the Big 12 and the four new teams that are coming into the Big 12 are going to want to send Oklahoma out with a loss.
Next up, we talked to Dari, who is obviously a Oklahoma fan. He's pretty outspoken about his allegiances to Oklahoma. Tulsa Union graduate in high school, and then obviously 1998 at Oklahoma. Lead anchor for SEC Network, who I'm sure Oklahoma fans will become familiar with here. Just your overall thoughts on what Dari had to say about Oklahoma and fitting in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, he talked a lot about the fan base as well and just how they fit in. And then he talked a lot about, hey, you know, Brent Venables is a guy that knows how to recruit the type of players. He talked about his time at Clemson, being able to get guys on the defensive line, the offensive line. That's where you win games in the SEC. He talked about that and kind of that he feels that Oklahoma's moving in that direction. I mean, it was a very positive interview. And again, he's probably a little biased, right, being an OU grad, but he's also seen what the SEC looks like. He's been their lead anchor since 2014. He knows what the atmosphere is. So to hear his perspective on not only the fan base, but also what he thinks Brent Venables brings, I think was really interesting.
Here's a little bit of our conversation with the great Dari.
Well, I think OU brings an absolute perfect fit. I mean, from tradition to importance in the daily household. You know, you're walking around, you see the slogan, it just means more people hear it, they make fun of it, whatever it is. But the reason that is as true as it is because every game, every outcome, every weekend, every result means more to people in this league and in the households in this conference than in most other places around the country. OU is exactly the same. We all know that. Culturally, it's a great fit. So they're going to bring a great brand, a great tradition, a great history, great fan base. And I'm not just saying that from an OU perspective. Everybody I talk to in this league is from our analysts that have no affiliation whatsoever with OU. Everybody's excited to have them here.
Last but not least, one of the staples of, I think, what has become a Saturday morning experience, driving to an 11 a.m. Oklahoma game, has been turning on Marty and McGee in the mornings. We talked to Ryan McGee earlier today, ESPN, college football, NASCAR personality, great dude. He kind of echoed the same sentiment that Andy Staples as well as Dari had. Oklahoma's going to be fine. I think that was the number one thing that came off the page today was the fact that Oklahoma, we almost get lost in this tunnel because we're so close to it all the time. Obviously, coming off the 6 and 7 season, George, Oklahoma is still one of the top 5 winningest programs of all time. They're the most dominant program since World War II. I think people just need to have a little bit of a deep breath.
Yeah, and maybe they're just trying to be nice to us because we're the new guys.
That could be it,
right? Maybe they're just buttering us up. But Ryan McGee was awesome. He was a guy that definitely spoke highly of Oklahoma. He spent a lot of time. He was telling us, covering Oklahoma before he jumped over and doing a lot of SEC stuff. And that was kind of what stuck out to me is he said, hey, the fan bases in the SEC are going to love going to Norman. He's excited about new fans experiencing that. And so I thought that was interesting. But yeah, he had the same sentiment of those other guys. Oklahoma's going to be fine. He expects them to win a lot of football games. Is it going to be tougher? Yeah, but that's the SEC, and you're going to have years that maybe you go 8-4. But he also thinks Oklahoma's a program that can continue to have success, and I thought that, again, was really interesting to hear from him. Here's
a little bit of our conversation with Ryan McGee in Nashville.
I am so excited for SEC fans to go to Norman.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most amazing places to cover a college football game. I haven't been there in a couple of years because we take Marty McGee on the road in the SEC, but prior to that I was there. I basically paid taxes there when Baker Mayfield was there. I was there all the time. And so it's such an amazing game day experience, and to me maybe nationally underrated.
Yeah.
And so I'm so excited for my SEC people. I went to Tennessee, and they got to experience Norman, and they won't shut up about it. And so I'm excited for them to go there. Just like I remember Baker Mayfield being so excited about going to Neyland Stadium in Knoxville, because you hear about it, but you don't ever get to play.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited for people to experience Norman, number one, and number two. I think Oklahoma's going to be fine. It's one of the top 5 greatest programs in the history of college football, in my opinion. Certainly top 10. And all they've ever done is win games in every era of college football in 150 years. So I don't think they're going to have any problem in the SEC.
So once again, caught up with Andy Staples from On3. Obviously, he has the YouTube show that is now nightly. They've been debuting that here from the Grand Hyatt at the SEC Media Days. Dari was awesome as well. Ryan McGee, as you just heard from, we go into day number 2 now for us. It's day number 4 for the SEC Media contingency. Some familiar faces coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Obviously, Josh Heupel, I think, is the leading headline, a guy that we really haven't heard from much since he left Oklahoma as the offensive coordinator. Obviously doing a really good job with Tennessee. Going to be interesting to see how he answers some of those questions because they're coming, right? I mean, there's a good Oklahoma contingent here. He's going to get asked about playing in Norman in 2024 and kind of that relationship with some of the staff members there. Obviously, he knows Jeff Lebby. He coached Dylan Gabriel at UCF. So all those things are going to be interesting. And then Shane Beamer, our guy, our friend, right? We're going to get to hear from him. I'm sure he'll be great. And Spencer Rattler, right? We haven't really heard from Spencer since he left Oklahoma. So there's a lot of Oklahoma headlines tomorrow. So it's going to be a really busy day, but a lot of fun.
And don't forget Lane Kiffin as well tomorrow in town in Nashville. Maybe we'll see him out on Broadway tonight. All of the interviews from today, Andy Staples, Dari Nowkhah, Ryan McGee. We also caught up with Texag's Billy Lucci talking about what Oklahoma fans need to go through as they go into SEC media or into the SEC just in general in 2024. So it should be a lot of fun. Still waiting on my Paul Feinbaum invite. But then again, there's always tomorrow. So from Nashville, day 1, day 3 technically recap, Eddie Radosevich, George Stoia here in Nashville.